Hi, my name is Tiffany Chow, and I am from New York in the United States of America. So, this project is called Resurrection, and in it, I wanted to kind of depict a world that would be extremely apocalyptic. However, I also wanted this piece to be ambiguous. So, I wanted it to also depict a kind of hope that could be lingering at the horizon. And I feel that now that restrictions are slowly lifting and people are getting vaccinated, that hope in the horizon is getting closer and closer with time. So, I feel like the impact of this piece truly expands even as things progress. So to create this piece, I started in the middle with weight 100 Bristol paper, and I sketched out the image of this girl. Now, this girl was originally based on my own features. However, I altered them slightly. I made the lips a little bigger. I changed the shape of the nose, the shape of the jaw, because I wanted to make the features a lot more ambiguous and appropriate to all of these different cities that are represented throughout the world. I didn't want it to be catered or specified to just one ethnicity or emphasize one ethnicity more than the other. So that is why I altered her features a little bit to look a little bit less like me and a little bit more universal. As you can see, her expression too is also a little bit ambiguous. So I wanted her to be able to be interpreted as hopeful, as disappointed, as sad, as mournful. There's a lot of different emotions that could be found by her face. And I think that's what also contributes to the ambiguousness of this piece. I really wanted it to be up to interpretation. So after sketching out her face, I cut out her image with an X-Acto knife. And as you can see, the hair really flows into these streets. And following cutting this out and cutting these little shapes out that also flow throughout the rest of these streets, I sketched out the pattern on Procreate, and then I slowly cut these strips one by one and taped them to each other. While making these little cutouts all the way around, because I also wanted this girl to connect to the world. I wanted to show the relationship between people and the world and consciousness with who you are in the big picture. So as you can see, the hair does connect to the rest of the world, and it shows that connection symbolically. Next, I worked on creating these little back pieces. So at this point, only these little strips were showing, and none of these patterns or buildings were shown at all. So piece by piece, I took pieces of this time 90 weight sketch paper, because I found that the 100 weight Bristol paper was a little bit too heavy for my knife to go through, and it required too much changing of the blade because it was just not sharp enough. So I ended up using 90 weight paper, which was equally or almost as stiff to keep its shape. And I made these little buildings and these patterns over here, these little bridges, also showing the connection between the world and the humans and all these different facets of the world. So after doing that, I decided to incorporate a lot of different cities. So that was when I decided that I really wanted this piece to be universal in that sense. So this was all done on one big wall, and I had the vision growing as I was going. So the next thing I did was I wanted to really incorporate COVID-19. So how do I do that? The main symbol of COVID-19 in the world today is probably just face masks. So here, as you can see, these streets are just piled with face masks. And I was envisioning these images of landfills covered with these disposable face masks that millions of people are wearing around the world all at once. So I was thinking also of this being part of the warning that there is an environmental implication of COVID-19, and we all need to be mindful of that. So I also wanted to inspire others with this piece to take these waste or trash things and to channel them into something creative. So I actually used masks, and I cut them up, and I made about 100 very detailed masks. You can see one hanging over here. So the blue, I took the blue part and I folded it and I cut it and I kept it shaped with hot glue. And then I took pieces of string to make the little ear parts. So that's what I did. I made about 100 of them. And because it wasn't really feasible to make this many masks that detailed, that I think that was the biggest challenge of this whole project, was making that it was a little bit tedious. But I ended up just cutting plain blue squares out of them to fill in the rest of these gaps to really show that image of those piles and piles of face masks. So I think that also incorporates into the apocalyptic state. I wanted to then create more layers to this piece to add some visual interest. So I then cut out these strips, this time again out of the 100 weight Bristol paper because there wasn't really much X-Acto knife action going on there. So I had all these little buildings incorporated one by one. I taped them all. And then I covered all of that with these masks and I glued them on one by one with hot glue. And to make the positioning more random, I would take the little masks and I would sprinkle them on and then glue them into place from where they landed naturally so that the scatter was completely random and it looked a lot more realistic that way. So, to conclude, I really hope that this piece can really shift perspectives due to COVID-19. I want the ambiguousness of the interpretation to really help people to realize that you could look at this whole situation as something that is devastating, which of course it is, but you could also look at it as something that unites the world. It's a common struggle that we all go through together. And I want this to unite mankind into thinking more about the world, thinking about how we work together, thinking about the environment, even. And I want to inspire people to shift their perspective into thinking of this as something that we can struggle through together and that we can get through together. And I believe that this kind of mindset is something that can really be applied to struggles in general outside of COVID-19 as well.